This is a preview of the Ravens versus Bears battle in Week 8, which I think is a truly unique situation where you have a team that's sitting at 1-5, hosting the 4-2 Chicago Bears, who are on a 4-game winning streak of their own. And nonetheless, Baltimore is favored by 7 points. It's remarkable. I'm not saying that the spread is inaccurate, but I'm just not sure how often we've seen that dynamic created, especially when, Chicago's scoring points. They're averaging 25 points per game. I am going to spend most of my time in this preview talking about the two offenses. Lamar Jackson's returning, right, or his expected/possible return. That's got to be the impetus, right, for the Ravens being favored despite really, a whole host of problems, many of which are on the field, but some appear to be festering, maybe, in the locker room, the coaching staff, or the entire organization. You've got this deluge of propaganda that's been put out this week, and I'm going to address that first before we get to the film. I usually don't conduct film study previews. It's generally a waste of time in many ways, but in this case, I think you have to. There's this cognitive shortcut that appears to be happening with the Ravens organization. Well, I guess I should say the middlemen, the media, right? The stories that are being published and put out. I'm going to address it up front and then move on. On a serious note, it seems to me to indicate that we may be mentally not in the place that we need to be from an organizational standpoint, and maybe even the players. So there's apparently a lot of complaints about play calling on offense, lack of commitment to the run game, betraying the game plan early. Some of those are things that I've mentioned before, but opportunities were there, I feel like, for guys like John Harbaugh, T. Martin, and even George Warhop to kind of protect or talk in as protective a manner as guys have done on Zach Orr. I'm reminded of Chuck Smith, the outside linebacker coach, in training camp, going out of his way to make it obvious and clear to everyone that the defense was fixed last year by Zach Orr. We've got none of that about Todd Monken. It sounds like, I guess he's a hard guy to work with suddenly, right? Todd Monken grates on people. If we believe what's being forwarded, and it's not subtle at all. Like I said, it's an overwhelming amount of it. Monken suddenly is a guy that some of our players apparently have issues with. His play calling, the way he talks to them, or perhaps his approach. Get over it. It sounds to me like the softest mentality I've ever heard coming from a Ravens locker room, if I can just be honest. I'm going to show one tweet because I want to give credit to this individual, Bo Smolka, at least one member of the Ravens media who appears to have some credibility. If I mispronounce his name, my apologies. You've got this shred of direct honesty here in a sea of bullshit, for lack of a better word. It seems to me as if we're shifting or magnifying problems. Are there problems with what Monken's done in 2025? Sure. But we've got one of the worst defenses in the NFL. We're last in points per game allowed. For the second year in a row, in fact, we've got a horrible defense to begin a season. When they said that this is not your father's Ravens, we didn't know how deep that statement went, because here we have a level of a willingness and then level of trickery that they're trying to pull off. Let's do it this way, right? I kind of said this earlier. I haven't heard Harbaugh out there refuting any of this. I haven't heard Harbaugh out there making contrary statements or protecting Monken. Monken's a grown man, doesn't need protecting. So is Zach Orr. And both of them have to stand on their work. And right now, Zach Orr's not succeeding. I think the defense played better against the Rams. We have this consistent body of work from Monken that's been high level, elite, when Lamar's been out there, right? Maybe you have different thoughts about all this and you've been able to ignore it. I want to be direct with you and go even a step further. I hope Todd Monken is difficult to deal with. I hope he's abrasive. I hope he's confrontational with whoever, and I mean whoever. The offensive line, George Warhop specifically. He sounds like a clown when they put a mic in front of him, to me. John Harbaugh. I hope that Monken's confrontational with him. T. Martin as well. Lamar, the wide receivers, all of them, whoever. I'm way past pretending that everything's fine in Ravens land, and my suspicion here is that we've got some messages being put out there, suggested from the Ravens organization. I could be way wrong, and you're welcome to not be as cynical as I am about it. Has there been times where Monken's play calling's been predictable? Sure. Right. I think there has, yeah. I've criticized it. Where we've been had a lack of commitment to the run game? Yeah, even dating back to the AFC Championship game against the Chiefs. How come we didn't hear all of that with this level of ferocity and tenacity leading into 2024? I'm going to forward you my thoughts here and then move on. My guess is it kind of makes it difficult to be consistent with your play calls when you've got a terrible offensive line. And that's what we have. We have to utilize basic pass pro, and it makes it predictable for teams to attack our pass protection. Possibly could flow from that our play calls become predictable as well. I know this. We've had to witness this defense 2 years in a row show up unprepared, lacking physicality, lacking aggression. They allow free releases to every wide receiver imaginable. It's all soft or off coverage. And now and anytime there's a discussion of Zach Orr's role here or in the future, there's this pretty obvious stop sign from John Harbaugh and some of our players. To me, it seems like being a former Raven has its perks. So let's focus on the Ravens defense and what they'll be facing Sunday. I'm going to really show film of the Bears, who, like I said earlier, are on a 4-game win streak, and they're also averaging 25 points per game. There's a lot of focus from a Chicago perspective, obviously, on Caleb Williams, right? Second-year quarterback, number 1 draft pick. He's only completing 61% of his passes so far. He does have 9 touchdowns against 3 interceptions. He's also only been sacked 11 times in 6 games. If you were to extrapolate that out, that'd be a dramatic turnaround compared to his rookie season of 2024. If you don't know or you're unaware, he was sacked 68 times last season. Now, this is not to say that things are all peachy for Chicago's offense, for sure. I think Williams has made questionable decisions at times. I'm going to present 2 of them in this video. Against my better judgment, as I said earlier, I've decided to show film here, which has generally been a waste of time in previews. But I wanted to try to present as comprehensive a look as possible at another team's offense, and that's the Bears, for multiple reasons. I decided to get up early Saturday and produce this and see how it flies. I actually love putting out videos on Saturday mornings. I hope that for some of you, or hopefully, or all, you're able to enjoy it while, lazily consuming coffee or something else. So let's see how it goes. I have an affinity for Ben Johnson's offensive scheme. I have to be upfront. That's obvious, right? There's some elements of it that are a lot of fun to watch and really put the defense at a disadvantage. I think their offensive line is vastly improved. I think it's 2 or 3 levels above. Of course, you got the additions of Joe Thuney, however you say it, and Jonah Jackson, right? Veteran guards who've played at a high level at different places across the league. Even though Jonah Jackson's experience with the Rams, wasn't necessarily positive. Recent weeks, they've replaced Braxton Jones as their left tackle. I think he's actually out this week with an injury anyway, but his snaps had already been eliminated in recent weeks. They've handed those to a rookie left tackle, second year left tackle, Theo Benedet, if I pronounced that correctly. He played his college ball in British Columbia, yes, Canada, but he missed all of 2024 after being a UDFA. He's a good run blocker, from what I can tell on film, but a lot to improve on in pass pro. They also drafted Ozzie Trapillo, and they have Darnell Wright as the right tackle on the other side. I think this offensive line, generally, from the film I'm seeing, they can execute. I had 4 games of them to go through. I intend to present to you 13 or 14 plays here overall. I had their Week 1 game against the Vikings, who have really defensively just fallen off a cliff in 2025. Then I had Chicago's Week 2 destruction at the hands of the Lions. Really mismatched competitive for about a quarter and a half, perhaps. Week 4, their win over the Raiders that, kind of really kicked off their streak, I guess. And then some film from last week's 26-14 win over the Saints, which is a really weird team to watch on film. Chicago's got significant talent at wide receiver, right? Rome Odunze, DJ Moore, who's having a very efficient season from a catch percentage standpoint, and then the rookie Luther Burden. Very jealous of Chicago fans that they get to watch that guy. I thought he had incredible talent. They've also got a slot wide receiver, specializes in there. I think it's Olamide Zacchaeus, formerly of the Commanders. Again, if I mispronounce the name, my apologies. I think it has to be noted that the Bears defense flies around, even though I'm not going to cover the film here. I know they're going to be without Tyreek Stevenson, and then he's an outside corner. Kyler Gordon, more of a nickel safety type. The Bears have forced 15 turnovers in the last 4 weeks. Clearly, they're doing an excellent job at taking the football away, but specifically on inaccurate passes that they're turning into interceptions. Basically, turnover-worthy plays they're capitalizing on. Kevin Byard has 4 picks. He had 2 in the win against the Raiders. A really horrible game for Geno Smith. I can't understand what's going on there in Las Vegas. The entire product looks subpar, and Geno Smith, especially in that game, really should have been taken off the field. Byard's playing a lot of free safety at times. He's getting the ball turned over for his offense. I think they've got the best version of Tremaine Edwards that perhaps we've seen, the inside linebacker, Mike linebacker. He's leading Chicago with 60 tackles, maybe it's 62. He's also got 3 interceptions, 4 passes defense, and a sack. Him and TJ Edwards, they're very dynamic. They play fast. They're aggressive and smart. I think they're as good as any pairing of inside linebackers that we've seen, to be honest with you. Edwards is very versatile and's got high awareness and coverage. They've got 12 sacks, I think, even though those sacks are spread among a ton of guys. I think their defensive front is young, athletic, quick, and very formidable. Now, having said that, they did give up over 500 yards of offense to the Lions in week 2. But generally, we're talking about they've been around 340 to 350 in terms of yards per game allowed on average. They have twice held teams to far below 300 yards. New Orleans last week and Minnesota in week 1. Those teams are at 254 and 253 respectively in terms of yards produced. It's a talented group, especially with Jaquan Brisker back. He missed most of 2024. I think he played 5 games. I want to present some film here of the offense, but the question I think that's largest for me is, can the Bears defense stop the run consistently? So they can cause problems with our play calling, our inconsistent play calling, get us off schedule, create timing issues for our offensive for Monken. I don't know. I will say this: they've allowed an average of 137 yards a game on the ground, and that number is actually minimized or pulled down because the Saints only put up 44 yards on 17 carries last week. I think it would be in the Ravens' best interest, to get the run game going for a lot of reasons, right? Set up complementary plays, whether it's play action or otherwise. Keep the pressure off Lamar. Like I said, they've only got 12 sacks. That's better than us. But I do like the Bears' front 6-7. They're active and tough. Nowhere near comparable to the Browns and the Texans at all. They're allowing 25 points per game. Now, keep in mind, Baltimore's defense gives up 32 points per game. 32. Anyway, I want to present some elements of their offense. I'm interested to see the fan turnout for this one, given that Lamar's back, and this is also the last home game in a month. We've got road games against the Dolphins this Thursday coming up, and then Minnesota and the Browns. I've got some foundational plays and concepts here that they like to do. There's significant exposure, or possibility, I should say, for trick or abnormal plays every week in a Ben Johnson offense. It has to be said. Nothing would surprise me there. I do have 2 here to show you. They've also run the stumble bum unsuccessfully in 2025, an actual flea flicker that I think was also unsuccessful, and then a fake flea flicker, which is really cool, and I want to show you near the end of this video. They're averaging 4.4 yards per carry. DeAndre Swift is their lead back. He's questionable on the last injury report that I saw. I think 419 yards so far this year for him. Roschon Johnson is their third-string running back. He's out. They're only averaging 4.4 yards per carry, like I said, so that sets up well for Baltimore. They've been outrushed by a total of 50 yards in the aggregate for 2025 while giving up 5.3 yards per carry defensively. All right, let's do some film here of the Bears offense. If you stuck around this long, I appreciate it. Again, previews are fun to get out and produce. This one I got up early Saturday morning to try to get out for you guys. So one of the foundational elements of Ben Johnson's run game is trying to widen up defensive ends, right? That's what so many people do, whether it's the option game, whether it's zone run concepts. And in this case, the running back is going to start off flowing to their left, the top side of our screen. And this is what I would call a designed wind back. Kind of the giveaway here is the fullback. Now it's 11 personnel, so he's actually, personnel-wise, he's a tight end. It's Cole Kmet. He's going to start off in the same direction, but then he's going to veer back underneath of Max Crosby, the defensive end, to the bottom side of our screen. Now the Raiders are in the perfect look, the perfect response, I should say. They're bringing the inside linebacker underneath of that wind back block. Some people call it a sift, whatever you want to call it. You can see Kmet is stepping off the midline, and he's got to get out of Caleb Williams' way. So he's got to clear Caleb Williams and then veer back. Now, they do have a play-action pass that works off of this. They've run it for years in Detroit. Jason Kabinda, a former Penn State player in Detroit, who I don't think he's in the league anymore, but he had a couple of catches off this. They utilize it with their tight ends in Detroit the last couple of years, Sam Laporta and others. So I would call it a designed wind back, everybody working in this direction, including the tight end, and he's bringing it back underneath and trying to kick out this defensive end. It's unsuccessful here, but this is a foundational play in terms of the way that I want to analyze their offense. I think this is an opportunity for the Ravens defense to identify something. Basically, 11 personnel when they put the tight end in the backfield. Look for that type of wind back run there as a fan, but then also the Ravens defense. Hopefully we've got a plan and we've prepared for that look. Along the same lines, I backfield with another tight end. This one happens to be 13 personnel last week against the Saints. It's not a wind back, meaning the tight end isn't stepping off the midline and then veering back to go get this defensive end, which is Chase Young. The way they're getting this done is you got a slight lock or just touch of the defensive end by the backside tight end. I think it's Loveland. So all the offensive line in purple is working to their right, the top side of our screen. Fullback / tight end working in that direction as well. Running back does cut it back or wind it back underneath, partially because they've widened up Chase Young post-snap. I'm talking about right here with everybody working to the top side of the screen, the right side of the offense. Tight end is just gently stabbing him for a moment and then working up to the second level. We're talking about this right here, number one, and then there's Chase Young unable to close down on this. I did think that there was some opportunities for Chase Young to be a little bit more committed in the final seconds of a play or before contact. He looked a little tentative at times to me. But in any case, you get the idea, right? I do want to talk about a couple of things with the Bears offense. They do not block with the same ferocity as the Lions did under the Ben Johnson offense, meaning there's times where you see guys kind of standing around and letting the pile be pushed. This is from the same game last week against the Saints. Ball in the left hash, and it's a split zone. Conceptually, they're just trying to widen up the D end in the same manner as I've presented the previous two plays. And the D end in this case happens to be Chase Young one more time. It's split zone. The running back almost scores on it. It's the backup whose name I'm going to really struggle with. But in any case, it's a downhill look from the running back, and then he's veering underneath of this kick-out block on split zone. But what's expanding or threatening the defensive end? And in addition, the safety here. I'm not sure if that's Reed or not. But in any case, it's the motion by Zacchaeus. It's the motion by the receiver. So it's threatening the reverse to the top side of our screen, the right-hand side of the Bears offense. And then along with that threat, you have the kick-out block by the tight end on the defensive end, Chase Young. So it's a cool concept. I think Ben Johnson's really good at creating extra wiggle room for the running back, extra wiggle room, an extra lane, if you will, and kind of trying to widen people up. And instead of having, a 2.5 foot gap, maybe you have a 3 foot gap or 3.5 or even 4. Now, something to mention here, O-line, tight end aggressiveness, guys getting involved, yes. There are some guys who do not consistently. There are guys that just really, on film, if you watch it, you would say they look selfish. Certain guys seem to be balled in, and certain guys do not. Even at the end of this play, as they appear to be pushing themselves into the end zone, you can see Caleb Williams is celebrating for his team. This guy, nothing. All right, so moving forward a little bit, we've got, obviously, from the run game, Ben Johnson, foundational element or step 2 is the play action stuff. So this is going to be a play action boot, complete to DJ Moore. It's out of 11 personnel. One tight end on the field, okay, down here to the bottom, it's Cole Kmet. Motion across is by Odunze. He's basically going to run a wheel and then deeper out concept off of that. This, classic play action stuff, right? Running back to one side in terms of flow. Williams is very athletic, number one. Number two, throws exceedingly well when moving to his right. Got multiple delivery styles when moving to his right. So we can look for this from a Ravens standpoint, the boot going back to his right-hand side. So when the ball is on the left hash, as a fan, we're talking about, where it is right here. As a fan, feel free to try to focus on that if you want, if the quarterback's under center. Something else to talk about here is this little C-gap insert that everyone's doing, but Ben Johnson does this in a different way oftentimes. So a lot of times when you got play action to one side, the whole offensive line is moving in that direction. That's not the case under Ben Johnson always. He'll step the tackle back opposite of this flow and then take a tight end or a receiver and insert into that for multiple reasons. Sometimes he'll climb to the second level if it's an actual run concept and try to close this guy off. It's what I would call another wind back run. That's not really what happens here. You got this kind of delayed route being run by Zacchaeus. Again, you see the nature of the insert. The target is DJ Moore, so forgive me if I annotate too much with the plays. If you don't enjoy it, you're probably not watching at this point anyway. But if you don't enjoy it, feel free to let me know in the comment section. The play action boot, something that Ben Johnson is going to utilize significantly if they can get the run game going. One more iteration. I'll try to cover as many elements as I possibly can here. Somewhat limited, obviously, and late by putting this out on Saturday morning. So last week against the Saints, again, this is a 1st and 10, 12 personnel broken bunch. This is one of my favorite formations that Ben Johnson uses to attack. Detroit still uses it under John Morton. So 12 personnel, one tight end to the right. I think it's Loveland. One tight end to the left, Kmet, who at this point, obviously has been ruled out. The route concept, Moore is essentially running a clear out route. Odunze, a shallow out that I can't really draw, accurately because I only have so much space. And then Kmet across the field, left to right for them, top to bottom for us. And you can see the nature of it, the play action fake to the running back. Everyone moving to the left for the offense. Granderson, this is interesting. I thought he played well last week at times. He's got to see Williams with the football, and he doesn't attack at all. There's no one really to contain the quarterback. Breesy, who did not play well last week in some of the film that I had, he's trying to contain the quarterback. Kmet running across the field. So you can see the lane that's there, possibly because Granderson either A, didn't go to the quarterback, or B, ended up in the wrong lane from a pass coverage standpoint. Really kind of a whipping nature of his throws here by Caleb Williams. Moving to his right. 12 personnel broken bunch. I think this is a swing factor. I'm not going to show the play from the end zone angle, but this is the same play. I'm just going to talk about the broken bunch for a moment. And what I mean when I say that is it's got one tight end and no one else outside of him to one side, and then you have a tight end who's off the line. And you've got this broken nature to the bunch. Normally you would have, 3 guys in a bunch set. So I call it broken bunch because the tight end is distended from those 2 receivers or connected to, in this case, the right tackle. So hopefully I said that or explained that in a way that makes sense. The play that really I think is devastating out of this, that the Lions use a lot in 2024, I've only seen the Bears run once this year, is broken bunch with a wind back zone concept. So for a moment, we'll move this out of the way. I couldn't find the play. So it's a zone concept, all the offensive linemen moving in the same direction as the running back, okay? And then the backside tackle will step to the defensive end away from that flow, okay? So imagine that he's stepping to that defensive end. And then finally, the part about it that I think is really cool, and Sam Laporta for the Lions is great at, is the tight end will step in and insert into this gap, but he'll go get the linebacker. he'll go get the linebacker who's pursuing the play. And what it really sets up, and I've kind of talked about this already, what it really sets up is running back flow to this side and then a wind back off of it. It really puts this linebacker in a lot of conflict. So when you see 12 personnel, I know that the broadcast teams do a crappy job of presenting personnel information, and they certainly don't talk about formations. But when you see two tight ends on the field, one of them to one side, one of them to the other, who's off, consider that it might be broken bunch, and you might see that wind back play. That's just a heck of a lot of fun to view. Let's talk about Williams' ability to move around, throw on the move, particularly to his right. This is a spectacular throw. 3rd and 5 against the Vikings in week 1. He's initially looking down here to the bottom side. So DJ Moore, just kind of this slicing slant that he'll sit in between the hashes. Again, that's another thing that's indicative of the Ben Johnson offense is that, you'll get a route that kind of sits down on one of the hashes. I believe it's a landmark for his offense. Late is going to be Odunze across the field, and he's going to be the guy who gets the catch. It's a brilliant throw by Caleb Williams, excuse me. Here is Zacchaeus, 14. So he's got this delayed slant. And for whatever reason, Caleb Williams decides, even though he's looking in that direction, he doesn't want to try to fit this throw in here. I'm not sure why. But in any case, the completion ends up being to Odunze from the top of the screen. I don't know, I see plenty of examples of Williams getting through his reads. It's not like he's just making one read and that's it. In this case, there happens to be, some slight pressure of Jonah Jackson being walked back into his face. And that's the reason why, in my opinion, when he gets to the second read, he's out of there because he perceives pressure by the defensive tackle. Moving to his right, sliding to his right, he's a dangerous guy throwing the football. He did throw an interception against the Lions in this regard or in this dynamic, moving to his right. Kirby Joseph was able to corral the interception deep down the right sideline, and then he did it again. Later on in the game, Williams did it again. It ended up being an incomplete pass, but it was a spectacular throw, almost as good as this one. This is sick, man. Moving to his right, finding Odunze. You can't teach that once you get to the NFL level. Really, you can't teach that at all. One more example here of what I would consider his maneuverability as well as his awareness in the pocket. Again, from week 4 against the Raiders, I think we're into the third quarter. So it's 12 personnel. They're going to motion to ace. So his tight end motions across left to right. And it's just like, a slight play action and a 7-step drop. So Caleb Williams is getting all the way to the end of his drop from under center alignment. And then initially seems to be looking for DJ Moore on this kind of deeper outside curl route. In addition, you've got the tight end sliding out into the flats. Spins away from one defender, and then eventually I think Max Crosby and the same defender end up kind of corralling him, or I should say trying to corral him, control him, funnel him to each other. They're unable to do it. This ends up being a pass down the right sideline. I think it's to Komet, who initially rolled out into the flats. It's a great example. It's somewhat grainy film, but it's a great example of the fact that he can throw the ball moving to his right in a somewhat surprising way, meaning the location of where he's putting the ball, I think, is pretty daggone good here. He puts it in pretty much a spot where only this tight end can make a play, and it's low. It's not interceptable. Was that on purpose? Was that intentional? I mean, it certainly looks like to me this would be the 5th time I've seen this dynamic this season where he's rolling to his right and he's put the ball in a spot where, his teammate can catch it. I think he's spectacular, moving out of the pocket, throwing to his right. Let's talk about decision-making in the pocket at times, situational awareness, and the balance between that and being patient. Okay, so this is a 3rd and goal against the Raiders in the first quarter. Chicago's up 3-0, by the way. He's trying to get the ball to this route here. It's Odunze. You also kind of have this mirrored route from the bottom side to DeAndre Swift. I'm just not a fan of where he's trying to work this football at all, even though I tend to have less of an aggressive or less of a negative opinion about Caleb Williams overall. I recognize that his completion percentage is low and certainly could be better. This one bothers me if I'm a Caleb Williams or a Chicago fan. You've got an inside linebacker directly in the window for where Odunze is going. I'm assuming that's where he's throwing this football. I'm not sure if that we're going here. yes, DeAndre Swift is a guy that you could possibly get the ball to, but you've literally got a safety who's sitting right here. But in any case, I guess you're trying to throw it over top of this linebacker, right, with enough pace to get it there between and underneath those two safeties. I'm just not sure the trajectory is there unless you're going to jump ball this, unless you're going to throw it high and let Odunze go get it. But, I'm not sure how I can explain to you where I think that ball is going because I think it's a poor decision. You're up 3-0 in the first quarter. It's a third down. There doesn't appear to be anything there to me. You're more than welcome to let me know if I've misinterpreted it or missed it. And I think from a decision-making standpoint, that's one that Caleb Williams and the Bears staff would like to have back. I don't know how many turnover-worthy plays he has in 2025. I just showed the film. I try to interpret it and tell you what I see. I will say that there's been some hiccups at times in 2025, in my opinion, with the decision-making. This is a 3rd and 15 from the same game against the Raiders into the third quarter. Not a problem here. The Raiders are trying to basically invert or cap the safeties, and this post route by Odunze wide open. It's a mistake from a Vegas perspective. Again, 3rd and 15, they're in a mug look. The line to gain is right here. So on top of the mug look, the Raiders are basically capping those two safeties. We're talking about these two here. And sitting them essentially at the line to gain. And it's just a mistake. I mean, it just is. Odunze runs his route over the top of those guys. This is a strike. This is an example of Caleb Williams reading things quickly, certainly recognizing and understanding the coverage to say that he can't do those things is just ridiculous. We have some examples of poor or decisions that were lacking. Sure, I just showed you one prior to this, but we have plenty of opportunities to display film and talk about him going through the process, going through the progression, going through the reads. In this case, it's a strike for, I think, 29 yards, puts the Bears up 16-14 in the third quarter. Another third down situation, this one against the Bears, one more time, 3rd and 5, and Odunze has not been efficient this year. He's clearly very talented, but 24 catches on 46 targets, so 52% completion, 52% catch percentage on his 46 targets. However, he does have 5 touchdowns. Big frame, can play through contact well. Caleb Williams, definitely trusts him. He's looking there initially. I can see Wiggins and or Humphrey trying to get physical with the guy some, particularly on third downs. The Ravens need to do more of this, in my opinion. Play a little bit more physical, not allow so many free release, so many access routes. But in any case, for Caleb Williams, getting the ball out here in space towards the sideline, pretty clean win for Odunze. I like the play from a Bears standpoint, like the throw. He has, first of all, Caleb Williams has the talent at receiver and tight end position, and then his own individual skill to convert on third down. That's why I think this is a more dangerous game than a lot of Ravens fans might. Another third down, touchdown, in fact, here to Odunze. This is week 2 against the Lions. Like I said, they got absolutely annihilated on the scoreboard, but early in the game, able to keep it close. So you got these stacked receivers up to the top side. Really seems to be a giveaway that we're talking about. When it's 11 personnel and you've got stacked receivers, we're throwing the football. When it's 12 personnel and you've got stacked receivers, that could theoretically be the broken bunch formation that I talked to you about. So I don't know if you're like me and you try to predict plays in your head pre-snap. I'm not so good at it, but we all, are armchair quarterbacks or armchair defensive coordinators. Hopefully the Ravens guys are more prepared this week. That's a tendency that I've noticed, 11 personnel stacked twins versus 12. Odunze basically uncovered across the field. This is a route that is in the Ben Johnson offense. Sometimes they take it all the way across the field, but oftentimes it's a read, I think, and they just basically sit down on one of the landmarks. I think the landmarks in the Ben Johnson offense are the hash and then the tops of the numbers. That's quite common in a lot of spread offenses. I'd like to see the Ravens get some pressure on him, get him off schedule so things like this don't happen. I think this is Brian Branch going with this route by Zacchaeus across the field. Seems to me that that's the guy who could theoretically be covering this. Certainly would not attribute this to the inside linebacker, Jack Campbell, but in any case ends up being a touchdown that allows Chicago to tie the game early in the first quarter. With Komet being ruled out, obviously Loveland, the rookie, becomes a little bit more high-profile target, given some opportunities, I should say. It's a 3rd and 7 last week against the Saints, 11 personnel. Stacked twins, like I said, down here, or pseudo-stacked twins with Moore and Odunze. Very similar route to what I described to Zacchaeus earlier and somewhat to the one that Odunze just scored a touchdown on against the Lions. Kind of like this delayed or staggered slant cut. And then here you have Odunze on a little bit deeper in route. Komet's a big loss, even though he's only got 9 catches. Loveland only has 8. This is one of them. It's a 3rd down conversion against, I think it's Reed, the veteran safety for the Saints. And Williams is looking there immediately. I think that's interesting because you've got Moore and Odunze down here at the bottom side of the screen, his 2 high-profile targets. And then Zacchaeus is the outside receiver, so certainly that's a possibility. It's a right-to-left read. And so I think that Caleb Williams is better at right-to-left reads than perhaps left-to-right reads. I mean, it's not uncommon for a right-handed quarterback. What I mean is, immediately looking to the right here, you've got the possibility of this route. You've got Loveland on the out against Reed. What really looks like man there. You've got what would be possibly number 3, and then 4 if you're able to come back all the way across the field. My point in mentioning that is I think Ben Johnson knows his players. I think he knows his quarterback, and I think he knows the type of offense that needs to be utilized. I will say this, DJ Moore is at 71% catch percentage for the year, so quite high, and Luther Burden, the rookie, is at 85. He's got 12 catches on 14 targets. Let's talk about a couple of trick plays. Now, there's a whole bunch of these, and I have a theory on how Ben Johnson gets this done, and I'll forward that here after we show these last 2 plays. This is like a wing reverse, an inside counter, if you will, to Burden, number 10. I love inside counters, and there's actually 2 linemen pulling here. The left guard is pulling and kicking, and the right guard is pulling and wrapping. You can tell that Ben Johnson trusts his guards because they're involved in some of the somewhat irregular stuff that he does consistently. Max Crosby really gave them problems, off the edge, especially early. He's going to totally disrupt this. You've got to block the backside defensive end on counter-type concepts, otherwise you get exposed. And in this case, it's the tight end Komet, who, once again, I said, will be out. He's the guy who's unable to control Crosby at all. And on this inside flip, there's really Caleb Williams is, showing the football. So from a design element or, Caleb Williams executing it, there's got to be something better than us just holding the ball. If you want to do this, you've almost got to make it look, if you ask me, like option to this guy. So that it appears as if there's a reason why Caleb Williams has the ball hanging out. Flips it to Burden, so that way it's a forward pass, and if something gets disrupted, then it's an incomplete, and it's a tackle for loss nonetheless. Ben Johnson has a ton of these. I think he's got a dedicated period to it, and I'll explain that a little bit more after I show the last one. They've got what I think was an unsuccessful flea flicker earlier in the year, maybe week 2, maybe week 1, excuse me. And then here is a fake flea flicker against the Raiders in week 4. So DeAndre Swift's in the backfield. Like I said, he's questionable as of the time that I record this. He's got 419 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns. So he's going to accept the handoff and then get downhill and then fake the flea flicker, veer to the bottom side of our screen, the left side of the offense. It's almost like screen blocking by the right guard and left guard. Again, they're attached to so many of these trick plays, and that leads into my theory about how Ben Johnson gets so many of these installed and run efficiently or smoothly. You can see what I mean? The fake pitch back by Swift, complete with Caleb Williams, like throwing his hands up in the air, high hands, like he's receiving the football. And then, again, you've got Thuney, the left guard, moving out to a second-level defender, and then Jackson, the right guard, also moving out to a second-level defender. They've got all the Raiders players reacting like it's pass. And then DeAndre Swift is on the move. It actually comes back for a penalty. Swift with a face mask to, I believe that's Jermaine Pratt's face. All right, number 1, we as Ravens fans and certainly the Ravens coaching staff on the defensive side, we should expect something that's trickery or abnormal, in my observation, it usually involves a core group of guys. So, yes, Ben Johnson has in Chicago, I'm sure, and then in Detroit previously. He's got a wide range of trick or abnormal plays. I don't think everyone takes part in the install. I don't think everyone takes part in the practicing of it. I think you've got a subset group of players, or a pullout, if you will, to use a classroom terminology. Basically, in Detroit, the following guys were always involved in their trick stuff: St. Brown, Montgomery, Laporta, of course, the quarterback, right? Jared Goff then, and now Caleb Williams. This season in 2025, look at what Detroit's done, right? Ben Johnson's no longer there, but David Montgomery has got 2 Wildcat touchdown passes, one to a tight end, Brock Wright, and one to Jared Goff, that didn't count against the Chiefs. Clearly, Ben Johnson's not there, but the point is still valid. There's a small group of guys that are involved in this. I think that DeAndre Swift is one of them, and I wonder if maybe Ben Johnson takes 16 or 18 guys that are obviously starters and maybe key backups, and they go to a separate part of the field and they run these trick plays like 15 or 18 minutes a week now that they've been installed in camp. During that time, other backups and maybe younger players are getting reps in their typical offense, basically running plays with the first-team offense, with the second-team offense, and some first-teamers that aren't going to be involved in the trick play nature, and then moving everyone else to a certain part of the field. My suspicion is that's how he gets this done, as opposed to the entirety of the offense gathering together to only watch a certain number of players execute trick plays. Why do I say a certain number of players? Well, in games in Detroit and now here in Chicago, you only see certain guys involved in it. In any case, that's my theory on how Ben Johnson gets so many trick plays installed and then executed during the game. I know that it's possibly annoying to not present any Ravens film, but I'm trying to do a kind of like Ken does at Film Study Ravens, know your opponent. In this case, displaying some film to talk about the individual players. I think you've got a drastically improved offensive line. Nothing like the O-line that they had in 2024 that gave up 68 sacks and also couldn't run the football. They're only averaging 4.4 yards per carry, so I think that's notable. DeAndre Swift is playing well, in my opinion. From a running back standpoint, they do have him and the backup as a capable backup to possibly throw in there. I think the Ravens defense is in a situation, has an opportunity to build off what they did against the Rams. Basically recognize formations, recognize situations where the Bears are going to be more run or pass based. In my opinion, this is a game where the Ravens defense can play well. While I have respect for the Bears offense, averaging 25 points per game, clearly a talented guy as the quarterback, Caleb Williams, and a very gifted, intelligent, and prepared offensive coordinator in Ben Johnson / head coach, I should say. I think this is a chance for Zach Orr's defense to kind of take another step forward, or at least play a functional brand of defense such that Lamar, Todd Monken, Derrick Henry, and the offense, are able to get us ahead. I'm not projecting a win. I don't know what, is going to happen in this game. I really have no clue. We don't even know how much or if Lamar is going to play. I suspect he will. My point in focusing on their offense was we know who's going to be available for Chicago on Sunday, and we don't necessarily for the Ravens. In any case, this is my one and only preview for the Ravens-Bears matchup in Week 8. Coming off of a bye, we would expect the Ravens to be prepared. They should certainly be prepared. Lamar's practiced 3 times this week. The injury report for the Ravens looks good. Of course, it does not for the Bears. They've got 5 guys ruled out. I think 3 that are questionable, including DeAndre Swift, who would be a big loss. And if you guys enjoyed the video, please let me know in the comment section. Number 1, likes and comments always help the videos perform better from a views standpoint, a watch time standpoint, in addition, the revenue that it generates for us. And finally, if you would like to see this work pushed out to a larger audience, please consider grabbing a link to this video, sharing it out on social media so other Ravens fans can enjoy it as well. Appreciate you guys' time.